Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Utopia News Warcast. Today we're talking about Genesis. Now, not too much gets talked about Genesis. It's got a fairly small group of players that play it compared to the rest of the World of Legends, for instance, let's say all of Utopia, that is. But there are still some diehard players that are into it, and there are some interesting game styles that could always be brought back to make Genesis great again. I mean, it was always a little bit kind of Utopia, World of Legends little brother, but I mean, that still doesn't mean that wars aren't any less fierce and that the competition is less fierce in any way. So we've got my host guest tonight here, David C, and we're going to look at what MUGA has in store for this coming age of Genesis. All right. So, David, are you there? Let's see. Uh-oh, did we lose David? Maybe I just have a bad connection right now.
Yeah, I'm here. I gotcha. How's it going? I think I went in and out a little bit, but I'm here.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, you know what? I think it's you're just on the move there, so there might be a little bit of chop, as it were, when you're going in and out of the conversation. So, as everyone knows, the last round of Genesis just ended about an hour ago, I believe, and as always, people are always wanting to know when the next Genesis is going to take place, what the changes are going to be, and what they can expect and how soon they can expect those to happen and be posted. So I know there's some chatter, a lot of chatter actually, about the changes that are going to take place on the upcoming round of Genesis. What do you have to say just in general about those changes coming up, David? Is it something we've seen before, or is it going to be something completely new?
Well, for the coming age, hopefully, what our goal is to take a new set of Genesis changes, like we just saw, and with this round just ending an hour ago or so, as you said, what we can do is restart the round very quickly using the same exact stats and details, racial stats, mechanics, everything will be exactly the same. We'll get it restarted very quickly, except we'll change the format to the round to be a Great Utopian War style,
Oh,
where
that's awesome.
kingdoms match off and fight against each other and just war phases over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you know what? I think that's something that we were kind of talking about in the past when it came to some of the changes that were suggested for Genesis and even for World of Legends. I mean, there's some definitely some interesting stuff that's happened in Utopia in the past. And if anyone's looking at the broadcast right now, you'll see I've actually got a link to the Wayback Machines page of the sign up sheet that Swerve used to have posted exactly for this. Now it gives you some basic details. You had about 3 days to sign up. Kingdom assignment and freeze time was 1 day, and then the game started, right after that. Not too dissimilar from how it starts now. Some of the older rules that the game started with, this is the Great Utopian War, was all players start at 1,000 acres of land. The kingdom explore pool is 1,000 acres and rises very slowly. Players may not defect. It's up to the kingdom to learn to work together. Players may not reset their province. All decisions are final. Vacation mode is only 3 days and can only be used once every 2 weeks. Weaker version of Paradise Spell. No combat magic or thievery outside of war. Now, so those were just some of the rules and things that made it the Great Utopian War. And I think a lot of people get really bored of out of war. I mean, I think everyone just kind of wants to be in a steady in and out of war. I know it's always a nail biting time when you're coming up to the end of your ceasefire and you don't have an opponent that in mind that you want to wave. I mean that was always something, or sorry, that is always something that monarchs and war leaders and stewards always have trouble doing, especially when they're busy in their day-to-day lives. But I think having this great utopian war set up, if it's anything like the way it was set up before, or anything like this way back machine leads us to believe, if anyone has wasn't around for it, I mean this is a great way to just match people together, people who've never played before, and it's back to back exciting war. I mean, how could it get any better than that, right, David?
Exactly. I don't think it does get much better than that. Always knowing you're going to have an opponent, not having to search for an opponent, and just going right into war stance without worrying about who's pushing the button and what are we going to do. And so all that stuff just gets taken right out of the equation. You're just placed into war stance with the next kingdom. There's several different options and how we'll actually implement it. But what we're looking at right now is similar. If any of you have played in the Genesis ages where we had almost like an auto war mechanic where you could wave a kingdom, and as soon as you were hostile with that kingdom, you could just instantly press the war button and take a different kingdom to war without them even retelling. And so it'll be very similar to that in the sense that when we implemented that, we implemented a sort of pre-war ceasefire. So you would declare war, and then war would start 12 ticks later, so that people had a chance to see what was happening, prepare for it, and then everybody would be ready for that war start. So obviously, with this round being a planned war stage, there wouldn't be that wave somebody and then declare. It would just be a pre-war ceasefire with a set time period where that war would begin. That way, everybody has a chance to see who is my opponent, when will the war start. You can gather intel. You can do all of your pre-war operations to plan the war, and then once the war tick starts, have at it.
Awesome, awesome. I think that's something that everyone kind of wants, and definitely I think what people are looking for in Utopia is a lot more exposure to war itself. I mean, that can be a little bit hard in World of Legends, especially if you're looking for, someone who maybe more matches your skill level or your style of play, so you can have a really fair war where both sides can learn, have a good time, and not totally just get your teeth pushed in. I mean, there's a lot of dangerous kingdoms out there, especially in World of Legends, and I think, the community would definitely benefit from having that mix and match style of kingdom making to help, bring some new players together. Now, with regards to War Declare, I know we kind of just talked about it there. Is there any kind of plan? Like, is it even possible for the system to kind of mix and match and do an auto declare kind of situation, or are we kind of, just looking at it most likely going to be the way that you described earlier, kind of where, it's almost like an arranged war, kind of, both sides kind of wave each other and then war starts more or less. I mean, they don't really have a choice in this regard because the server's basically pitting them against each other. So, you don't really have a choice there. Now, more importantly, especially for all the players out there who are used to 1 hour ticks or less than 15-minute ticks, what are we looking at tick wise here? Are we going to do like 10, 15, 20, 30-minute ticks? I mean, what's reasonable here for this kind of thing?
So I think the best option for us to move forward with this Great Utopian War to include more of the World of Legends players is to cut the ticks to 30 minutes. In that sense, it's a faster paced game, but it's not quite as fast paced as Genesis, which typically runs with the 15-minute ticks. And yeah, as you're kind of mentioning there, what we'll end up doing is having sort of a bracketed system of winners playing winners, and like record players, kingdoms playing other kingdoms with like records, so that if you lose your first war, you'll play another kingdom that you'll then war. Your next opponent will be a kingdom that had lost their first war as well, with like records playing each other throughout. And eventually, the bracket will come to a point where the winner the winningest kingdom will start playing the winningest losing kingdom, if that makes sense. So that if you get unlucky in 1 or 2 rounds, you still have an opportunity to fight your way back up to the top and have a chance at that best kingdom once again.
Yeah, because I mean, I think something that we always see in World of Legends and even in Genesis is, in most cases, once that really skilled elite players kind of get up to the top there, it's almost impossible to move them out of the way. So definitely some catch-up mechanics would be nice, with regards to the ceasefires. And I mean, I'm not sure what the final plans are exactly, but it would be nice to keep everyone kind of relatively close together. So that is to say, if it does come down to a range thing, at least everyone will be in range regardless of their war score, maybe for the end of it. But I guess that all needs to be hashed out anyway. Now, some other things to look at. I mean, with regards to a max time, is there anything, everyone always talks about min time, but will there be any kind of max time on this? Because we've seen wars that go on longer than 2 weeks, and sometimes some as long as 3 weeks or four weeks in World of Legends. Is the game kind of just going to say, all right, that's it? You've gone back and forth enough. You should have proved your skill and ability by then. Is there some kind of metric that it's going to use to gauge who the winner is? Like, will there be a winner? Could they possibly both lose this war?
Well, so the exact details of how we determine the winners hasn't quite been fleshed out entirely, but there will be a method for determining a winner if wars go to a max length. And so the way the old system worked, there was the war meter way back in the war meter days, and they used the war meter to determine winners. And if you didn't meet a certain point on the war meter when that max time ended, both kingdoms were losers. And what I'd like to have in this system is a definitive way to determine a winner. I'd like for there not to be two losing kingdoms in a war. So we'll come up with a system that will determine a winner and a loser. Ultimately, when that max period hits, and if the max period hits, there's I'm not sure there's really a great way to do min time wars. There will be an opportunity for kingdoms to surrender, and then the min time stuff. If kingdoms have been sort of cut in half, like using the same sort of mechanics that World of Legends uses, if you've utterly destroyed the opponent kingdom, then the war will end, and then for those wars to just go on forever, there will be metrics put in place that will determine a winner and end the war so that we can move on.
Awesome, yeah, and I think that's important because I mean, everyone on the server who's playing the Great Utopian War, will basically, I guess, in a sense, be at the mercy of all the other kingdoms, and depending on when they finish their wars and such. Otherwise, they wouldn't get assigned war partners. So, I mean, what's going to happen to those kingdoms that kind of finish their wars earlier than others? Like, will they be stuck in some kind of limbo, or will they just get matched against whoever the next best opponent is, regardless of who's still at war? Like, how's that kind of going to work, or is that something as well that's kind of not sure about at the moment?
No, I think so. The way we'll do it is we'll structure the min time with the max time not being too far out. Like you're not going to have a war that goes on for days while another kingdom could end their war in half a day. So we will have the min time and the max time fairly close together in the sense that we don't want kingdoms just being able to fight and fight and fight and then stay in that one war forever. And this way, the way the bracketed system will work will always be like we'll either be in round one or round one will be over and we'll be in round two. And that way all kingdoms will be in the same number war that all other kingdoms are. This will allow the ability to at least for this first round, as we continue to evolve, everything is really an evolution, and we make things better and we try to improve on things. And so at least in this first round, what I'd really like to see is this bracketed system, sticking to round one, round two, and so on, with some kind of, as you mentioned earlier, like not catch-up mechanics, but the ability to keep all the kingdoms relatively at a similar size, so that the winners fighting the losing round, the losers of the winners of the losers bracket. It's not going to be, you know, unfair. And
Mhm.
if you got a kingdom warring another kingdom, if you're the winning kingdom and you've got all these advantages because you've won all your wars, then it doesn't really give that opponent a chance, a fair chance at fighting against this kingdom. We want to see who's the best warring kingdom, not who's had the best opportunities and who's capitalized the most on their opponents. So if you're a better warring kingdom, then you should be able to fight against any other kingdom with the same starting point and be able to beat that kingdom. And so that's one way to look at Great Utopian War. And like I said, I'm sure we'll see it evolve over time, but at least to get it started, the best and easiest way, most efficient way for me to take care of this is to keep things as fair as possible, and stick to sort of the bracketed system where kingdoms can stay fairly close in range and size, with whatever sort of catch up mechanics we can to make that happen.
Right, and I think, because we're including net worth, land, and honor into all this, I would assume we are. I mean, that would require the need to have that, bracketed system in place. However, if we were to do something like, the entire kingdom just resets, everyone starts over from scratch again, science is minimal except for what you make in, um, the prep period, and, we can boost science a little bit so that it has some meaningful numbers for the war, unless the kingdoms have the ability to decide on a certain science level, like a early, medium, or late age, science where they could just automatically get books to boost, their science up based on predetermined war agreement, and then for instance, we just use war victories as the primary metric for the whoever is the best at warring, let's say. Do you think something like that would work as well, or you thinking we're probably stick closer to like the original standard system?
Yeah, I don't think we'll do a full reset on provinces and kingdoms and such. So the natural growth of kingdoms through war will definitely occur. And so with a winning kingdom and a losing kingdom, there's natural uh, variance in size. And if you just typically run that through, what's a bracket going to look like where the winning kingdom keeps winning and the losing kingdoms don't win as much? They're naturally not going to be the same size. So the catch up mechanics will allow for the losing kingdoms to get back to close to, if not the same sort of similar size as winning kingdoms. Obviously they won't have quite the same advantages as the winning kingdom because they didn't have to grow to that size, but the idea that this is able to happen to keep kingdoms at a very similar size, I think will just help maintain that sort of level of fairness throughout the age.
Yeah, because I think that's the biggest issue, and can be in World of Legends as well. I mean, constant losses means that you're playing catch up with the rest of the server, and that's just on a land and net worth basis. While the winners are, playing, or rather staying ahead of the server, because they're focusing heavily on things like Wizard's Breaker, Science, and stacking up that honor for those late age positions in the charts. So definitely something to keep an eye on, because I mean, we want to make this more about the war strategy, not so much about planning the most opportune setups for wars, kind of like how World of Legends is, where you could rack up a ton of easy wars, and then with the current metrics, and still seem like supposedly the best warring kingdom in the world of legends, whereas that might not be the case. I mean, all of your wars might have been on an opponent that was 10% smaller than you, despite your hostile wave, as opposed to the kingdom that's waving up almost a million net worth, or 10k or 20k troops down. There's huge differences there, and I think some players in the past have been kind of upset of how the war points have been doled out, simply because the game kind of operates in that fashion. So I really hope some of these other players in World of Legends take a moment just to check this out, at least, at the very least, start a province or at least try to make it happen. Maybe, if we get good enough feedback, the actual start date could possibly be postponed so that we could do more advertising for this to get as many players in on it as possible. Um, but are we gonna look at any kind of restrictions, like when it comes to pool sizes or pool growth, or anything, like restrictions with regards to science book generations or spells like Revelations, Fountain of Knowledge, or even like our new mental focus spell, I believe that's what it's called in World of Legends, where it allows you to train wizards faster. I mean, that's pretty sweet. Is all those spells going to remain unchanged, or do you think they'll require some balancing, just to like stay in line with the new plan for this style of Utopia?
Well, what I'd like to see is, science, as you mentioned, is a really big part of it. And one of the aspects of science that I really like about the way the system is right now, it allows for a lot of personal preference, styling of your province. And if you get too much science, then obviously you're allowed to, you're just a super pumped province. And so what we want to try to stay away from is providing an opportunity to create that super pumped province. So any science generation, any scientist generation, any book generation stuff is going to be removed. Fountain of Knowledge, Revelation, Laboratory. So all this, anything that increases your potential science production will be removed from the Great Utopian War age. Just to keep everybody on a sort of similar level of science where you can choose what you want to focus in. You can choose to, build your province in a particular way that somebody else who has the same race and personality selection, if they've done something different, you could have two fairly significantly different provinces. And one other thing that you mentioned there was the pool size. So what I'd like to really see is, we do have the ability to match pool size. So almost like create a pool based on province size relative to the kingdom, and stuff like that. So what we'll probably experiment with in this first age is the reducing exploration costs, or removing the penalties entirely in End of War Ceasefire, such that when these wars end, it allows kingdoms and provinces to use their pool, get up to the next size that they're supposed to be to. And I mean, it's not going to be a requirement that you get to the size, but if you're matched up against a kingdom and that other kingdom uses their pool and your kingdom doesn't, now you're entering a war that you basically have no chance to win. So the idea will be that you're provided a certain amount of exploration pool, so that you can get to the next tier, to the next size that you're supposed to be for that round in the war.
Right. So despite being, um, I mean, obviously that's kind of what everyone's going to want to do if they're gunning for that top spot. I mean, when the free stuff like the free pool with no costs or no penalties is given to you, I mean, you use it. There's no reason not to use it. So am I right to understand that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it certainly right.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. So am I to understand that the Great Utopian War is kind of going to be like a building thing that kind of goes on over several ages for Genesis? And is it going to, like, are we going to start calling it the Great Utopian War maybe instead of Genesis? Is that something that's in the works right now?
Yeah, so we can certainly update. So because like I said, I would like to have these Great Utopian War style rounds following each set of Genesis changes. So we would see Great Utopian War, this round, seeing as the Genesis age just ended. And once this Great Utopian War round ends, we would have another round of Genesis with new races, new personalities, mechanics changes and all that. And then following that age, we would look at doing another Great Utopian War with that Genesis round changes. So it's almost like getting a look at the Great Utopian War races and personalities ahead of time, doing this sort of free for all type round that we have now, and then getting into the structured war format.
And do you think this is something that might eventually make its way to the world of legends as well? Some type of style of tournament style like this? I think we would all hope that that would be the case eventually, but you never know.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that question. Say it one more time.
Do you think that with Genesis, the way it works generally is it's tested out for a significant amount of time in Genesis and eventually makes its way over to the world of Legends? Do you think that the Great Utopian War is something that may eventually be seen in the world of Legends at some point, some type of
That
tournament
that
structure?
is a good question there. I'm not sure on that. I think we'll definitely will require a certain amount of testing. Ultimately, what I'd like to see happen is have a lot more um, automatic, entering of wars and starting of the new wars and all that stuff. So that there's quite a lot of testing that will go on in this sort of using the Genesis server and this style of play to get a good format and throughout the evolution and improvement of the process. Maybe in time we can see a sort of spin-off server of Great Utopian War that might mimic World of Legends changes that could just be successive rounds.
Yeah, and that it would just be purely war with no little or no ceasefires and almost no out of war time. I think as I was saying earlier, I think a lot of players, especially newer players, would appreciate that you know that that experience because it's I mean it's out of war has its moments and it's somewhat important, but uh, for people who just want to be warring all the time, being out of war is kind of sucky. And then when there's lots of or when there are mechanics in place to dodge wars, quote unquote, I mean, it kind of makes it less a less fulfilling experience. I think for those who are just war hungry, because they don't want to be chasing wars all the time, they want to be in war all the time. So I think that this Great Utopian War in Genesis has great potential. Definitely something we need to keep going and keep building on, as you said. Lots of testing it definitely will need to be done. I mean, it would be awesome if kingdoms could just automatically be pitted against each other, and everyone just gets a notification from the bot or something saying, "Hey, you're at war now," with almost no input from either kingdom. I mean, I think that would be cool as well. Although I've always laughed at or joked at the idea of, hey, why not, in most other war situations, all it takes is for one army to attack. So, with regards to war, why not, just declare war immediately upon the first army's invasion? I mean, that's an act of war. So, like when the first army invades, that's when war is automatically declared. So, I mean, there's lots of options, lots of things to look at when it comes to this. And I have to say, there is a lot of chatter going on in the Age Changes, the Genesis Council room. It's very exciting to be in there. There is a lot of stuff going on back and forth, a lot of good topics. I think there's still a lot of work to do on this particular, Great Utopian War to kind of, especially if we're going to try and bring it back to where it was the last time when Swerve was hosting it. We definitely got the right people in the right place. But always, it's always good to get more feedback. So if anyone from the community has any feedback regarding this, definitely reach out to any of the Age Changes Council in Genesis, or even just talk about it in the Genesis channel. I mean, it's really important stuff. This is the future of Utopia as we know it. So yeah, I mean, was there anything else you wanted to talk about with regards to the Great Utopian War at this time, David? Or you think maybe we might have to do a follow-up podcast, maybe closer to when the age would start, just to see how things are going, see how people are feeling about that, or you have any other last-minute thoughts?
Certainly, yeah, I think that would be a great idea. One thing you kind of touched on it earlier, mentioning that we should do a bit of advertising and making sure people have ample time to see it, get ready, and join and plan. So what we're thinking right now is probably at least about 5 days. So the Genesis round just ended. So we'll see about 5 days from now is the potential start of the Great Utopian War. That will give everybody plenty of time to plan, prepare, get signed up, and just know what's going to happen. There certainly will be some restrictions going into it. We'll see a forum post that'll detail all of the fine details, how it's going to work, and all that stuff. But yeah, so certainly look for that if you're interested. Talk in the Genesis channel. I think will probably be the main area, unless we could probably talk to some of the people in charge and get a Great Utopian War channel. Maybe I think that could possibly happen.
Yeah, I think
um,
maybe that would be good. And then with regards to development of it, we can start one of those fancy new thread things that
yeah,
Discord has just released
that would
recently.
be cool.
So maybe that would help with like capturing people's ideas because the thread, for what I understand, it'll keep the data kind of away from all of the idle chatter, so it'll be easy to keep it summarized in the thread position.
Mm,
So we
yeah.
should definitely experiment with that a little bit to see if that can help us in any way. But thank you so much for joining me tonight, David. And with that, thank you everyone who came to watch or who is currently participating in the MUGA Discord. Remember to reach out to any of the Age Changes team or myself or David, of course, if you have any great ideas for the Great Utopian War. More than happy to talk about it. Was there any last words you wanted to put in, David?
No, no. Just look forward to a good age and maybe a follow up when we're about to get things started or during the first round. Works for you. Excited to
Awesome.
see it happen.
Sounds great, David.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you so much for joining me, David, and thank you everyone for watching. That is the end of this podcast, Warcast of Utopia News. Thank you so much. This is your host, Wind, signing off.